Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining the ISAP thematic session today. My name is Temula Murun. I'm a fellow in climate and energy area in IGS. Today, I will be the MC. First of all, I would like to announce the logistic matters. This session will be done in English, but there will be simultaneous interpretation into Japanese. In session, we have the Q&A function. However, please note that we may not be able to answer all your questions due to limited time. If your question is directed to particular speakers, please mention it in the question. That's all for the logistics information. Now we would like to start the ISAP thematic session, co-creating the national long-term roadmap to synergize mitigation and adaptation in ASEAN. The workshop is co-organized by Institute Pertanian Bogor University, University of Philippines, Los Baños, Thammasat University, Vietnam Institute of Meteorology, Hydrology, and Climate Change, and IGS. Today's workshop, we have two main sessions. First session, we will have presentation from 4 ASEAN member states, Philippines, Indonesia, Thailand, and Philippines. The second session, we will have panel discussion on opportunities for mitigation, adaptation, synergies, and regional cooperation. To start the workshop, I would like to invite the Executive Director of IGS, Mr. Ono Hiroshi, to give us the opening remarks. Mr. Ono, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Temron-san. And do you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you. And good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the ISAP thematic track 2, entitled Co-Creating the National Long-Term Roadmap to Synergize Mitigation and Adaptation in ASEAN. Again, I'm Hiroshi Ono, the Executive Director of IGES Institute for Global Environment Strategies. IGES is pleased to invite you to participate in this workshop. IGES has been supporting the climate actions of ASEAN member states as a pilot model for developing and emerging economies. Among others, we supported the development of the ASEAN State of the Climate Change Report published in 2021. Currently, we are working on co-creating the national long-term roadmap to synergize mitigation and adaptation with distinguished national think tanks in 4 ASEAN countries. We thank the IPB University in Indonesia, University of the Philippines, Los Baños, Thammasat University in Thailand, and IMHEN in Vietnam. The ASEAN Climate Vision 2050 shown in the ASEAN State of Climate Change Report aims to realize a resilient net zero ASEAN community by the middle of this century. To reach this ambitious goal, the ASEAN is now developing the ASEAN Climate Change Strategic Action Plan for 2030, or ACCSAP, which becomes the ASEAN's climate change roadmap for synergizing mitigation and adaptation. Transition to a resilient net zero ASEAN community requires updating and integrating national climate policies such as long-term strategies, nationally determined contributions, and national adaptation plans by employing an innovative methodology. This will facilitate mainstreaming climate change objectives and measures into sectoral development policies. Furthermore, considering the diversity of ASEAN countries in terms of vulnerability to climate change and capabilities for mitigation and adaptation, it is essential to understand the differences across countries and multiple stakeholders, especially with regards to long-term national development visions, climate goals, and key challenges and critical factors on the pathways of mitigation and adaptation. Against this background, this session aims to first share the preliminary results of our ongoing international research project, and second, provide recommendations about how to integrate mitigation and adaptation at the national policy level in ASEAN and other Asian countries. The research results are mainly based on feedbacks from key stakeholders such as youth, experts, industries, and governments in 4 ASEAN countries. Today's session serves as a process to co-develop the guidance on the national long-term roadmap to synergize mitigation and adaptation by 2025. We hope that the guidance will identify key time-bound actions that are urgently needed to fill the gap with the Paris Agreement goal, and harness the opportunities to mobilize finance, technology, capacity building, and to enhance policies and institutional frameworks. I hope this session will provide for an excellent opportunity for wider audience to learn about ASEAN's efforts towards a resilient net zero ASEAN community, and also hope that this session will become a meaningful step for formulating and updating relevant national strategies and plans, as well as the ACCSAP. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Ono, for the opening remarks. Now we would like to invite Dr. Arino, my colleague, to give the introductory presentation and share objective for the workshop. Arino-san, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Temura-san. Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for your participation to today's ISAP session. I'd like to briefly introduce today's participants and also the objective of the workshop. Today, we have 4 speakers and panelists. First of all, from Indonesia, Dr. Rizal Debor, Professor of IPB University, Head of the International Research Institute for Environment and Climate Change. And from the Philippines, Professor Demasa Macadon, Adjunct Professor, School of Environmental Science and Management, University of the Philippines, Los Baños. And from the Thailand, Dr. Abunit Lemekokchai, Head of Research Unit in Sustainable Energy and Built Environment, Faculty of Architecture and Planning, Thammasat University. And lastly, we have the Dr. Tran Thai Tui, Director, Department of Science, Training, International Cooperation and Journal, Vietnam Institute of Meteorology, Hydrology, and Climate Change, IMHAM. Here's the context of the ASEAN in terms of the future climate impacts. In the ASEAN State of Climate Change report published in 2021, we did a simulation by using the climate models. And then it was found that ASEAN is highly vulnerable to extreme events such as the extreme precipitation events, hot days, extreme floods, typhoons, and droughts. Also, the climate change impact on crop productivity is significant. Also, the significant economic impact and number of people affected due to sea level rise. Lastly, we had simulations about the heat stress impacts that are significantly higher in countries such as Myanmar and the Philippines, Thai, and Vietnam. That is how we need to reduce the GHG emissions urgently. Here is another figure showing the GHG emission pathways toward 2100. The global 1.5 degree target calls for the ASEAN to achieve a net zero CO2 emissions in 2050, while ASEAN needs to achieve net zero GHG emissions in 2065 on average across models. Here is also the NDC targets. However, it is evident that there's still the gap between the NDC targets and 1.5-degree pathways. That is how we need to have come up with solutions and also aspirational and transformative solutions to enhance our climate ambition as well as means of implementations. This is a snapshot of the ASEAN Climate Vision 2050. It says unprecedented regional challenges are calls for ASEAN's long-term vision and roadmap to tackle climate change, not only enhancing transparency, but also we need to achieve transformation of the society by integrating the systems involving multiple stakeholders, and lastly, to motivate the people and motivate the systems to enhance their aspiration by harnessing the opportunities for the finance, technology, and also capacity development to reach the future goal of the resilient net zero ASEAN. Again, this background, ASEAN pathways is depicted in this ASEAN State of Climate Change report until 2030 and 2050. Toward 2030, we now are working together with multiple stakeholders for developing the ASEAN Climate Change Strategic Action Plan 2025 to 2030. We call it ACCSAP, to help the acceleration of ASEAN member states' NDC roadmaps and the review and implementing AWGCC, ASEAN Working Group on Climate Change Action Plan, and integrate multiple strategy and plans and programs of ASEAN into strategic areas, and enabling long-term transition, and lastly, to support the ASEAN Centre for Climate Change. Today's webinar is related to the right half of the long-term roadmap development. This is to aim to achieve mitigation and adaptation synergy. We now are planning to develop and publish the guidance on the long-term roadmap to synergize mitigation and adaptation by 2025. Today's workshop's objectives is twofold. First of all, to share the preliminary results of the ongoing international research project on the national long-term roadmap to synergize mitigation and adaptation in ASEAN countries by inviting 4 countries. And then second of all, to provide recommendation about the mitigation and adaptation integration at the national policy level in ASEAN and Asian countries. Especially, we like to feature discussions based on the opinions and the perceptions of key stakeholders, such as experts, industries, and most importantly, youth people. Thank you very much. So we start with a presentation by Indonesia, and Thailand's participant is now being delayed. So potentially Thailand's presentation might be backed up by IJES team. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Arino-san, for your presentation and sharing the objective of the workshop. In this session 1, we will have presentations from 4 distinguished speakers sharing key findings and policy recommendations for national long-term roadmap to synergize mitigation and adaptation in ASEAN countries. Now, I would like to invite the speakers in alphabetical order of the countries. First, Dr. Rizaldi from Institute Pertanian Bogor University in Indonesia. Dr. Rizaldi, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. So let me share my PowerPoint. So I might shut down the video just to ensure that the signal is good. Can you see the PowerPoint?
Yes, we can see, but it's not in the presentation mode.
Not in the presentation mode, okay.
Yes. I think it's in the bottom of the right bottom, yes.
So yes. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. In this opportunity, so I would like to share our view in developing mitigation adaptation synergy for a resilient future. As you might know, Indonesia is one of the countries that have commitment to implement low carbon and climate resilient development to meet the global target for avoiding dangerous impact of climate change to sustain our livelihood. So in context of mitigation, Indonesia will focus in the effort to reduce the emission from energy sector by deep cutting emission from the use of fossil fuel in the power sector and increase capacity of forests, land use, and other land use value in sequestering carbon. It is targeted that follow sector will reach net sink by 2030, and this will continue to increase to the future. So in the power sector, Indonesia will increase the share of renewable energy in meeting energy demand. So in electricity, which spent for 2021 to 2030, the share of renewable energy will reach 48% by 2030 and continue to increase up to 90% by 2050. So a large proportion, a large renewable proportion will be solar PV with batteries. This is about 50%. And several policies have been issued. For example, Energy Ministry Regulation number 50/27, which is amended by the Energy Ministry Regulation number 4 in 2020, that provide more provision to attract investment in renewable power. And also Energy Ministry Regulation number 13/29 to promote solar PV development. So you have conducted a survey with support from IGES to get people's views to the country current commitment and long-term target. So most people respond and believe that the current NDC is not sufficient for achieving the country long-term target. Nevertheless, nearly 50% of respondent views that Indonesia long-term target is already ambitious. In the long-term target, Indonesia expects that this ambition target could be realized with the availability of support from the international. So most respondents expect that net zero clean energy system is achieved through balanced, renewable, and clean energy center system, an energy system that integrate diverse sources of renewable and low emission energy in a way that achieve a reliable, affordable, and environmentally sustainable supply. So the system is believed have many benefits and contribute to the energy security, benefit to SDGs, increase resilience to natural disaster, and lowering costs and other, as you can see in the graph. Many respondents believe that renewable energy system will have high to very high co-benefit to environment, political institution, economic adaptation, and social. Potential co-benefit from diffusing renewable energy system has been identified. The highest co-benefit is for the environment, in which renewable energy will reduce air pollution, increase ecosystem service quality, and also reduce soil pollution, and etc. Co-benefit to adaptation is also considerable high, as the renewable energy system will also contribute to the increase of community resilience, health, water resources, and agricultural resilience. Nevertheless, the co-benefit to gender and social equity is considered to be low compared to other benefit, as you can see from the graph. The pilot project in Indonesia have provided good example on the co-benefit of renewable energy system, in this case solar energy, on increasing resilience of agriculture to climate extreme, and also community income. So farmer at Desa Kaliurip, where the pilot is located, actually spending for fuel or water pumping 25,000 per hour. So for irrigating rice field in a day, the farmers need to operate pumping for at least 7 hours. So the cost is even more expensive for residents who do not have a diesel pump, as they have to pay rent of the pump facility. Thus, with the solar power, farmers can save their expenses for irrigation. The water pumped using the solar power can manage water shortage during the drought periods and increase yield and planting intensity. But in this case, farmers also do not have to pay with cash for the service, but they can pay with rice at the harvesting time. So the potential renewable energy sources in Indonesia is huge. Among others, geothermal, solar energy, rural and urban, hydropowers, offshore winds, and the biomass. So you look at the average score is about more than 3.5. So it means higher than moderate. However, many respondents think that Indonesia's long-term target for renewable development is moderate. It is believed that adoption of renewable energy system must be accelerated, as power sector shall be fully decarbonized 10 years earlier than the whole economy to reach the net zero by the mid of this century. So the role of market-based pricing mechanism might be encouraged the acceleration of the adoption of the renewable energy system. So Indonesia already has this carbon pricing policy, and nearly 50% of the respondents believe that the market-based pricing mechanism will be fully implemented by mid-2030 to around 2040 in Indonesia. So upscaling the implementation of renewable energy system will provide adaptation co-benefits. Among the renewable energy system, wind and biogas energy will contribute most to the enhancement of community resilience, while hydropower would likely pair with the water resource security, and solar power contribute to health. So understanding adaptation co-benefit for renewable energy system is important, as this is one of the criteria in prioritizing the action. On the other hand, respondents also think that applying a set of criteria in prioritizing adaptation intervention is needed to make the action be in synergy with adaptation. From the graph below, as you can see, most of the respondents agreed that the important criteria to be used for prioritizing adaptation action is the mitigation co-benefit of the adaptation. In this case, reducing greenhouse gas emission. So in addition to other key criteria, among others, the contribution to the benefit of most vulnerable community able to respond to the worst risk climate scenario and also do not lead to maladaptation. So in terms of scale of intervention of adaptation, respondents believe that some of the adaptation activities has been implemented in large scale. From the graph, you can see that some of them included flood control dam, river dike, early warning system. However, energy is the lowest intervention that currently implemented at a large scale. So most respondents believe, it's about 50% of the respondents, that this kind of activity has been implemented only at a pilot trial, to at least one in the city. The renewable energy system also have been considered to be vulnerable to the impact of climate change. From the respondent perspective, climate change can damage the renewable energy system, particularly hydropower, supply network, thermal power plant, and solar or wind power plant, which has a score more than 3.5, it is more than moderate. And also the performance which cause inconsistent power supply from solar PV, also increasing power demand for other adaptation, as you can see from the graph. As the renewable energy system vulnerable to the climate change impact, so level of preparedness to make renewable energy infrastructure resilient to the climate change is considered to be to moderate based on the respondent opinion. Now from the graph, you can see that the score of each of preparedness is only between 2.9 and 3.15. So adaptation plan to protect renewable energy infrastructure system from climate risk is the lowest score on the preparedness level. So when we look at on the barrier counter to prepare the resilience of renewable energy infrastructure based on the respondent opinion, from the highest to the lowest. So in this case, actually the main barrier is policy and institutional, this is 31%, and followed by the financial barrier, human resources, and technical barrier. From the graph, we can see that policy and institutional barrier is to consider as a key barrier for having strategy for demand and supply management to prevent system breakdown caused by the climate risk. And use of the guideline on climate risk assessment for developing renewable energy system. While the financial barrier considered as the key barriers is to the reinforcement of power transmission and distribution facilities and power production facilities. So the takeaway message or conclusions that we can have from this study, that renewable energy will play a vital role for Indonesia to meet the Indonesian target to reach the net zero emission. Indonesia also has large renewable energy potential. However, many respondents think that Indonesia's long-term target for renewable development is moderate. So the accelerating the adoption of renewable energy system in power sector provides significant co-benefit on environment, political institution, economic adaptation, and social. So most of renewable energy system considered to be more vulnerable to climate change. However, the level of preparedness to make renewable energy infrastructure resistant to climate risk is still not high. So a number of barriers exist for establishing resilient renewable energy infrastructures, mainly policy, institutional barrier, and financial barrier. Some of the recommendations related to the addressing the policy, institutional barrier, and also financial barrier. One is about simplifying the permitting process for renewable project to reduce administration's bottleneck. Coordinated among the ministries can also ease the project approval, especially for land use in solar and wind project is also important. Another one is to incentivize the green investment by developing incentives like tax holiday, subsidies, and import duty exemption for renewable energy technologies, and part to make project more financially viable. And also the development of innovative financing mechanism by exploring community-based financings and crowdfunding, especially for small-scale renewable projects, which can engage local community and reduce financial barrier for rural electrification is also one of the important recommendations. And then the acceleration of the implementation of carbon pricing policy will provide financial incentive for carbon energy investment should be implemented as soon as possible. So I think these are the things that I can say for my presentation, and I would like to thank to all attention that have been given to my presentation. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Rizalti, for sharing case studies from Indonesia and highlighting potential renewable energy and its co-benefits, and also financial mechanism. And also thank you for making it in time. Now I would like to invite Dr. Damasa from University of Philippines, Las Bañas in the Philippines. Dr. Damasa, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you very much, Temulen. So good afternoon to everyone, and thank you for attending our thematic session this afternoon. Now, please let me share my screen. All right, so can you see my screen now? Hang on.
Yes, we can see.
Yes.
But it's not in the presentation mode. So
Yeah, I know. So
okay.
I'm clicking the slideshow.
Mm-hmm.
I'll play
Yeah.
from start. All right. Okay. So thank you.
Perfect.
So now I'm going to share with you the findings of our study on national long-term roadmap to synergize mitigation and adaptation from the Philippines. What are the key findings and the policy recommendations? Okay, the National Adaptation Plan of the Philippines for 2023 to 2050 has the vision to establish national adaptation priorities, enhance adaptive capacities and resilience against natural hazards and climate change, reduce climate-related losses and optimize mitigation opportunities, and promote transformative adaptation and sustainable development. There are 8 sectors in the national adaptation priorities, and these are agriculture and fisheries, water resources, health, ecosystems and biodiversity, cultural heritage, land use and human settlements, 7, livelihoods and industries, and last one, energy, transport, and communications. Okay, for each sectoral for each sector, we have identified the priority outcomes and the adaptation solutions. Like, for example, for agriculture and fisheries and food security, the outcome should be securing food supply, nurture nature, sustain livelihoods. For water resources, safeguard water security, secure and sanitary water for all. For health, climate adaptive healthcare for all, protecting health and well-being of Filipinos. For ecosystems and biodiversity, safeguard biodiversity, restore natural assets. For cultural heritage, population displacement and migration, safeguarding communities and culture. For land use and human settlements, data-driven land use, robust evidence-based planning. For livelihoods and industries, climate-proofing economies. And for energy, transport, and communications, protect critical infrastructure systems. Secure, sustain access and connectivity. And the adaptation solutions for all these 8 sectors include strengthening of infrastructure resilience, safeguard livelihoods with social protection and regulations, empower local governments and communities, mainstream integrated adaptation governance, and scale nature-based solutions. Okay, the implementation of the NAP follows 5 key guiding principles, and these are: first, it is based on international guidelines and local priorities. Second, it embraces whole-of-nation approach. Third, it integrates with existing plans, policies, strategies, and mechanisms to prevent redundancy, and it incorporates adaptation into ongoing initiatives. 4, it calls for regular evidence-based review. And lastly, it prioritizes a fair transition and inclusivity. Okay, the cross-cutting enablers for the NAP implementation are governance and institutions, stakeholder engagement, skills and capacity building, data and knowledge infrastructure, technology and innovation, adaptation, financing, and outlined in the tables are the key success factors. And our audience can take a look at the details of these different factors in the PowerPoint presentation, which will be shared with our participants. Okay, the implementation will be done at 3 levels: national, local, and international. Okay, the monitoring, evaluation, accountability, and learning is also an important aspect of NAP implementation, guided by 10 key principles: fit for purpose, participatory, strong government alignment, ownership, social inclusion, built from existing frameworks, transparency, comprehensive, resource efficient, and progressive. Okay, so that's the first part. Now I would like to share with you the Philippines Nationally Determined Contribution Implementation Plan for 2020 to 2030. So the Philippines has committed to reduce its greenhouse gas emission by 75% from 2020 to 2030, with 2.71% of this reduction being unconditional and 72.29% conditional. Okay. And this is the scenario for the business as usual, and the 2.71% below business as usual. This is due to NDC target, which is unconditional. And we really need the conditional, okay? The NDC target conditional to attain the 75% below business as usual scenario. Okay. Now, in our NDC, okay, so a total of 990 metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalent is the total greenhouse gas reductions, with a total investment of $72 billion US. Of these, 59% of the greenhouse gas reduction will be coming from energy, and it will require 36.5 billion. So a big chunk of the investment. This is to boost energy efficiency, improve the grid, increase renewable energy capacity, and switch to electric vehicles. Second would be agriculture. 21% would be coming from the agriculture, amounting to about 211 metric tons of CO2 equivalent. And the investment is only 1 billion. This is basically for adopting innovative practices in paddy rice cultivation, for flood control and water management, and to promote biodigesters for livestock manure management to reduce or to capture methane emissions. Okay, the other sectors will be for waste, transport, and IPPU or industry. Okay. This table shows you the different pillars and actions. So we have identified initial and midterm actions for each of the pillar. I'll just be mentioning the different pillars, and you can take a look at these different actions later in the PowerPoint presentation that will be shared. So for the pillars, we have delivering conditional and unconditional NDC action. Second, advancing cooperation with international partners. 3, develop market-based action. 4, strengthen resilience and adaptive capacity. 5, cascading the subnational level actions. And 6, ensuring private sector participation. Okay. During the implementation, the progress will be tracked, and then this will be done at the different sectors for agriculture, energy, industry, transport, and waste. Okay. And of course, through this implementation, the CCC, or the Climate Change Commission of the Philippines, will have a central role. It will be providing guidance in the quantification of the mitigation impacts. All right, now we go to the meat of the presentation, which is basically the preliminary results of the questionnaire survey on national long-term roadmap to synergize adaptation and mitigation. For the first part, okay, so with regard to development priorities, so most of the respondents highly scored priority would be 1, protecting the environment and ending poverty. Okay, the moderately scored development priorities are quality education, healthy lives, affordable, reliable, sustainable energy by 2100. Okay, with regards to net zero clean energy system, the renewable energy centered net zero energy system is more favored, okay, than all the other energy sources because of energy reliability, affordability, benefits and co-benefits on sustainable development, and recyclability of materials or circular economy. Okay, with regard to the net zero or net negative forest, many of our respondents favor natural forest, okay, because of biodiversity, disaster risk reduction, and indigenous rights. We have so many indigenous communities in our natural forests. Okay, with regard to synergy of net zero energy and forest systems for development, okay, renewable energy-centered system synergies are high for affordable, reliable, and sustainable and modern energy, and also for protecting the environment and for providing healthy lives. Okay, natural forest synergies are also high for climate change adaptation, protecting the environment, healthy lives, and for quality water and sanitation. Net zero energy and forest systems need to be designed to complement with each other to achieve development vision by 2100. Okay. Overall, okay, national development priorities and climate goals, synergies with development have a moderate positive correlation. Ending poverty requires additional policy or intervention other than energy and forest policies due to their limited synergies to ending poverty. Okay. Net zero energy and forest systems need to be designed to strengthen the synergy, especially for priority development components. Okay, with regard to national adaptation goals, highly requested are: 1, scientific-based on long-term climate risk projections. 2nd, near-term goals to avoid maladaptation and lock-in. And 3rd, long-term goals beyond 2050 in line with development vision. Okay, with regard to the co-benefits of solar power system, the graph on the right shows you that there are high co-benefits on political, institutional, environmental, economic and adaptation areas. Okay. Okay, so the high co-benefits, the different factors identified are air pollution prevention, agriculture resilience, scientific and technological development, public awareness raising, water saving and quality, and biodiversity conservation. The second part is on renewable energy diffusion and coal power decarbonization. Okay, so this graph shows here with regard to the evaluation about the feasibility of future power system, a balanced energy mix with 50% renewables and other carbon-free power sources is viewed to be more feasible for the Philippines. On the agreement level of power technology options, okay, our respondents highly agree that solar PV plus battery would become the backbone of future power supply system in the Philippines. On the target for renewable development, overall, our respondents think that the Philippines' long-term target for renewables development is relatively ambitious. Okay. And with regard to the technical potential of renewable energy, around 60% of our respondents give either huge or very huge evaluation to the potential of hydro, solar power for both urban and rural areas, and geothermal power. Regarding the early phase out and retrofit, okay, air pollution, CO2 emission, and land recovery are among the top criteria for early phase out of coal. While for retrofitting, CO2 emission, water stress, and air pollution are the top criteria. Okay. We also conducted a workshop here at UP Los Baños in February, early this year. Okay. And to start this, I just want to give you some highlights of the workshop. Now, I just want to start with this primary energy mix from the Department of Energy. So you will see that about half of our energy requirement is indigenous energy composed of oil, natural gas, coal, hydro, geothermal, biomass, wind, solar, and ethanol, and the rest are imported, either coal or oil. On the right side is our graph here, the Philippines power generation mix 2020 to 2040 scenario. And you will notice in here that natural gas and solar power would contribute largely in the future. Okay. Now, this graph here shows you the Philippines power demand and supply outlook. The yellow one is the new solar. So in the Philippines, solar power will have an important contribution in our. Okay, with regard to our workshops output for the focus group discussion on solar PV diffusion potential and associated co-benefits on land use, resilience, adaptation, and sustainable development. Okay, the result of the FGD, the highlight is that solar PV installations generally offer more co-benefits than risks for farmer income, climate adaptability, and green development. Okay, we also had another workshop of FGD on water-based solar power and land-based solar power. Okay, water-based solar PV systems may generate relatively higher co-benefits of climate change adaptation than land-based PV. So that's the result of our FGD. Now, the last part of my presentation is with regard to the policy recommendations. Okay, so these are items in here include integrate adaptation and climate goals in sectoral and national development priorities. Second, protect, conserve, and rehabilitate natural forests and ecosystems for climate change adaptation, food security, biodiversity, healthy lives, and quality water and sanitation. Third, scale the development of renewable energy-centered systems for affordable, reliable, and sustainable and modern energy, also for environmental protection and healthy lives. Next, design and plan human settlements to include green building designs adapted to flooding and higher temperatures. For example, stills in coastal and riverine areas, ventilation, energy-efficient lighting, and appliances. And then next one, mainstream circular economy to reduce waste and also to capture methane from landfill. Additional recommendations are adopt best practices in rice farming, such as alternate wetting and drying, precision agriculture, organic farming, integrated pest management. Next month, holistic policies and interventions to end poverty, design net zero energy and forest systems to strengthen the synergy to achieve development vision, and implementation of the adaptation solutions outlined in the NAP 2023 to 2050. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Tomasa, for sharing the Philippines NAPS and NDC and also highlighting the key findings from the national workshop that you did co-benefits on solar, water-based and land-based PV. Now we would like to move the next speaker, Dr. Bundit from Thammasat University in Thailand. Dr. Bundit, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, our colleague. For presentation of Thailand, Thailand we have the first national workshop with Arunasang IGS Bangkok in September, as shown in this figure. We also would like to acknowledge our partner, including the support from IGS. In the workshop, we present preliminary findings from the questionnaire survey, the same as the Indonesian team and Philippine team present before. Three parts. The part one is long-term development vision and climate goal. I will give the summary here. The part two, mitigation pathway with renewable energy diffusion and coal power decarbonization. The part three is the co-benefit of renewable energy. In the workshop, we also make group discussion for the brainstorming regarding our future of net zero emission. Here, the summary of the result from the questionnaire survey, such as in adaptation, resident commission of solar PV, we result almost be the same as the Indonesian team and Philippine team present. For Thailand, we conclude that solar PV has high to very high co-benefit in multiple areas. For summary of the result of the questionnaire for part 1, long-term development vision and climate goal, here are the highlights. First is national energy system and forestry need to be designed to strengthen the synergy, especially for development priority. Second, national long-term roadmap to synergize mitigation and adaptation is recommended to consider synergy to mitigation, adaptation, and sustainable development. For the second part of the questionnaire, regarding mitigation pathway with renewable energy diffusion and coal power decarbonization, here are summary of the conclusion. First, natural energy transition need to be find a balance between coal power, low emission, retrofitting, and early fade out by considering air pollution impact, land recovery, electricity price, as well as CO2 emission. Second, renewable energy also need to be considered as a viable option for the transition. For the part 3, synergizing adaptation with net zero mitigation pathway, we conclude that solar PV centralized renewable energy for a net zero system is expected to generate multiple co-benefits, not only to air pollution and agriculture, such as city, building, mobility, and the climate policy, but also to adaptation. And second, system integration and policy integration among mitigation, adaptation, and non-climate area are highly recommended. Regarding Thailand NDC, the new NDC and long-term low emission development strategy, this year we are dropping next generation NDC, or as you know, we call NDC 3.0. So from the 3 stakeholder meeting with public and related line ministry, we now, Thailand now agree that Thailand, next week, the Minister of Monetary Thailand will announce in the COP next week official figure. But I would like to tell you some highlight. First is Thailand new NDC will be based on absolute emission reduction. So that means we already agree that we will select a base year. Okay, and the base year that I propose is 2019. That we all have information, especially for inventory. Okay, so we are now upgrading our national greenhouse gas inventory for BTR1 according to MPG of Enhanced Plan Policy Framework under Paris Agreement, and then that base year greenhouse gas inventory will be fixed. Okay, and then NDC 3.0 for the target year, as you see in the figure, 2035 will be lower than the base year, and we promise that emission pathway of the new NDC of Thailand will be exactly the same pathway as IPC 1.5 DP and carbon neutrality 2050 pathway of Thailand. Okay, so for the detail, you may hear from Minister of Monetary Thailand announcing in COP next week. For the part of adaptation, regarding our workshop, national workshop with IGS Adenosang in September, we already agreed that we adopt climate resilience that discussed in COP28 UAE. We already highlight 7 key sectors, and now we adopt this key sector, and then we are now fighting for focal point for each sector. Okay, such as the first sector is water and sanitation. The government will assign the national water resource or national water management agency, right, to be the focal point. Upon all the 7 sectors, finally, Department of Climate Change will be the coordinator for all the sectors, and then we will implement these 7 sectors. For final remark, we highlight the key conclusion here. Number 1, system education of mitigation and adaptation to meet the net zero emission target provide co-benefit, as our ASEAN friend already present a lot of co-benefit to the local, to the national, to the regional, and to the global. Second, that transition is very important for net zero emission. That transition and system transformation need to be planned in the early stage. Even this year or today is already too late, but no other choice. We have to do it now, okay, to avoid the carbon lock-in and to keep global warming below 1.5 degrees. Finally, to achieve the net zero emission target, and I would like to say on behalf of Thailand that our domestic capacity and resource are not enough. Okay, so we need partnership and work together to achieve global net zero emission. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bundit, for sharing the result of the national workshop, which is also important for us to know that Synergise mitigation adaptation in the context of net zero emission. And it's also very impressive that Thailand's next NDC will be consistent of the long-term goal of Paris Agreement. Next speaker, we would like to invite Dr. Thai, Institute of Meteorology, Hydrology, and Climate Change in Vietnam. Dr. Thai, you have the floor.
Thank you. So, good afternoon from here. Actually, I'm in Australia right now. So I'm going to present you the case of Vietnam for a very primary result on the co-creating the national long-term roadmap to synergize mitigation and adaptation in Asia. So similar to the others, the purpose of the research is to investigate the distribution of climate goal, reasons, and trade-off, and to examine the potential linkage between the synergy and long-term development vision. And to conduct such kind of research, we have the survey developed by the IGS with containing 3 main parts. The first one is long-term development vision and climate goals. The second one is the mitigation pathway with the renewable energy. And the last one is the synergy adaptation with the net zero mitigation pathway. So besides using the surveys, we also have the national consultation workshop with the multi-stakeholders, including the officers from the line ministries and province, researchers from the universities, and the researchers from the research institutions. And also we get some, invite some representative from the Vietnam Union of Science and Technology Association. So the target audience, including both government staff, research, lecturer, and association. And here are some results. The part 1 for the long-term national development vision for 2100. And you can see here with the question on what development elements that they hope to achieve as a long-term vision. We can get the result high score. So the 2 high columns on healthy life and peaceful society. The other 4 columns in the light green color is a moderate score, focusing on the protecting environment, sustainable consumption and production, ending hunger, and quality education. Or for the what kind of net zero clean energy systems and that they hope to achieve in Vietnam in long term by around 2100. You can see here there are 2 groups. So the hope is set for the net zero synergies is set for the renewable energies concentrated and with all sources, and the other one is So the results indicate that the reconcentrated net zero energy system is hoped for due to its affordability, resources exploitation, industry formation. Meanwhile, the energy system using own resources is hoped for because of the energy reliability, resilient to disasters. For considering what kind of forest that we expect to have in the future, then you can see here clearly a very high column presenting for the national forest. And this is no doubt, even without survey, we still can see that. And the reason why the national forest for in the future by most of the respondents, because they think the national forest will contribute to the biodiversity and can help for the disaster risk reduction, cultural use, and life satisfaction. So these purpose as well as the forest carbon sink function. These are figures showing you the net zero energy systems in terms of the renewable energy centered and all sources. And the other one is for national forest. Also, for the renewable energy, it is indicating that high for the employment, self-settlement, and protecting the environment. And both the systems energy synergy with climate change adaptation is high. And for the national forest, it is a bit lower than energy system for the environment, industrialization, but it's high for adaptation. And the overall national development priorities and climate goal synergies with development have a moderate positive correlation, and the net zero energy and forest system need to be designed to strengthen the synergy, especially for priority development components. For the national adaptation goals, then the score provided in the survey, the maximum is 5. And the hope for the national adaptation goal indicating that highly request is to be scientific based on long-term climate risk projections. And 2 is to be linked with the SDGs and SFDRR for the near term, and to specify goals to avoid maladaptation and lock in of the system by considering the long term. Part 2 for the mitigation pathway with the renewable energy. So we all know that for the NDC in Vietnam, we commit to have to reduce about 15.8% with unconditional for GHG emission reduction, and target to more than 43% with conditional. Then how the ambitious level of such long-term target? So more than 70% sample view Vietnam's long-term target to be ambitious or very ambitious, whereas comparability of the LTS is evaluated to be moderate, especially with the global 1.5 degree targets. And the current NDC is thought less sufficient for achieving the country's long-term targets. The feasibility of power system decarbonization scenarios is very interesting. So the result indicating that lower feasibility given to the option of 100% renewable and over 80% renewable, the last 2 lines. And a balanced electricity mix with 50% renewable energy and the other carbon-free power source is viewed to be more feasible for Vietnam. There are some barriers for the development of solar PV and offshore wind. Overall, this is quite similar for both PV and also wind. The economic policy and technical barriers are reviewed high in general, whereas the social barriers are viewed at low or moderate. Comparatively, the economic barriers for offshore wind are relatively higher than those for solar PV, of course. Considering the possibility for the sample to accept the change of power price. So there is an increase in power price in Vietnam so far. And for the surveys, on the average, the responder accept almost no increase of the power price from the current level, with high and very high possibility. And the acceptable price would be increased about 111.5%. And this result confirms a quite low affordability in power price increase for energy transition. There are 11 out of 26 of respondent thinks the level of coal in the power system is high or very high. We have quite a lot of coal mine in Vietnam, and 17 out of 26 agree that should mitigate emission from the existing coal power plants. For the synergizing adaptation with the net zero mitigation pathway. In the survey, we can get the information to consider how the PV can provide co-benefit in a different land. The first one is on prevention of migration, improvement of employees' skills, health and housing, water resources security, agricultural resilience, community and livelihood resilience enhancements, and finally, DRR. So the different colors showing the different level. Then solar PV has a high to very high co-benefit in multi-areas, as just listed above. There are some barriers in terms of technical, policy and institutional, human resources and capacity, and financial. These are 4 main barriers that identified by the respondent. And among these, policy and institutional barriers could be the first priority or prerequisite before addressing other barriers. So besides doing the surveys and consult with the stakeholders, we have the consultation workshop at the national level, organized on 30th of July in Vietnam. It is the hybrid format, so we can invite participants from multi-province also. And the goal is to discuss and propose a solution for integration of climate change mitigation and adaptation measures together. There are some key messages come out from the National Consultation Workshop. The first one, we all agree that it is a need to consider the synergies and integration forest systems and net zero into the national LTS. We all know that currently Vietnam, and not just only Vietnam, the ASEAN countries are in the way to do the carbon neutralization. So the carbon neutralization will be the middle step to go to the net zero targets. And with the net zero target, the forest system and the carbon capture will play a very important role. So that's why all the stakeholders agree that we have to integrate the forest systems and the net zero into the LTS. The second thing is the transition to net zero energy needs a balance of technology upgrade for the lower emission and phasing out coal power. In Vietnam, wherever we issue the license for the coal power plant, it have the license to run the company more than 20 years. So step by step, we have to consider how to phase out coal power plants. The third one is early energy transition to net zero is necessary, but policy and institutional barriers still exist. So this one in the same language with the surveys that we obtained. And current fund for the adaptation is quite low at the present. It's accounting for around 30% of the demand. So there is a need to increase the funding for the adaptation. And the framework is the framework that we provide is currently version and is still a bit general. So the stakeholders requires to make more clear. For the monitoring system, it's very important to track how the process have been done. Then recommendation is provided on the update monitoring system for climate adaptation is crucial. Ensure the continuous tracking and evaluation of adaptation plan implementation. And climate change department under MONRE need to regularly update the status of plan and system for the effectiveness of the mitigation and adaptation measures implementation. So that's a very brief information provided within 12 minutes. Thank you so much for your listening.
Thank you, Dr. Sai, for sharing the workshop result and highlighting forest system integration into net zero energy, and also very interesting result on the share of renewable energy for the energy mix in Vietnam. So thank you very much. So I would like to thank all the speakers for your great presentation and sharing with us the key findings from national workshop and survey. Now we would like to start the session 2, the panel discussion with our speakers. In this panel discussion, we will share opportunities for mitigation, adaptation, synergies, and regional cooperation to enable this just transition toward resilient net zero in ASEAN region. So for this session, I would like to invite Arino-san to facilitate the session. Arino-san, you have the floor.
Thank you, Temel-san. I'd like to start the moderating this session 2. We have panel discussion. So first of all, we'd like to invite 4 panelists. So would you display your, show your faces, and we hope that the 4 of us, the panelists. So we'd like to move on to this discussion like this. So firstly, I'd like to have one key question, guiding question to all of 4 panelists. And then after that, we'd like to invite the audience for the questions. We have already received 1 question, so I'd like to ask Dr. Makadan to answer. So first of all, we have 1 key question. So considering the studies and the lessons learned from 4 countries' case studies, now we understand that, for example, renewable energy has a lot of co-benefits, and maybe that would be very nice for understanding the how to reduce the risks for the investment, because renewable energy may have not only costly, but it has benefits and co-benefits at multiple level. So that's how this will be increasing their de-risking the investments, and then harnessing and also promoting the renewable energy to net zero. So we have 1 question is what are the key cases for the synergy? Because we already mentioned the renewable energy and such co-benefits, but if you have anything else, any other key cases, of course, at the local level, but also the policy level, at any level, if you have anything specific, would you let us know? So firstly, I'd like to ask Dr. Rizaldi about key cases for the synergy. Thank you.
Yeah, I think I already give one of the example from the pilot that we have in Indonesia and have related to the energy, especially on the use of solar energy for irrigation in rice paddy. So there are many also good cases for actually the integration of adaptation to the mitigation, especially for the fishermen, which also quite, the adoption of this kind of technology is also large. But the other things also for the context of land use change and forestry, because in the case of Indonesia, we also have huge emission come from the land use and change and forestry, and we also have ambitious target how we can convert this volume into a net sink by 2030. So one of the main source of the emissions come from the peatland. So in this context, we also trying to encourage how actually the farmers can really adopt the sustainable practices in managing the peatland. And I think as Indonesia also established a new agency on the restoration of peatland and mangrove ecosystem, and actually introduced the program, we call it 3R. 3R is actually rewetting, revegetation, and revitalization. So this kind of activities actually have both benefit for mitigation and adaptation. So in this context, actually, how actually the farmers can convert, for example, the use of the peatland, which normally use the dryland farming practice into the new farming practice, which is adapt into the peatland ecosystem. So we call it a polyculture system. So polyculture system actually doing the rewetting and also allow for the peat to recover using the endemic species, but still have a high economic values. So of course, these have huge benefit for reducing also the peat fire, because the peat fire also main source of the big emission. But at the same time, by adopting this kind of these practices, actually farmers can also still get economic benefit, but at the same time also reduce a significant amount of emission from the peat. But of course, the main barrier and challenge for the farmers to adopt that is actually the waiting time for getting the income, because converting the practices into that, they also need some time for that. I think the linking this with the carbon credit will also quite critical. We also can provide a kind of incentive for the farmers who would like to really change the practices into the more sustainable practices, especially on the peatland management. So there are a number of pilots already implemented in number of location in Riau, for example, in West Kalimantan, in Central Kalimantan. But unfortunately, it's more still at a pilot stage. And I think we need to go into large scale of implementation, and supporting policy for this are quite critical. I think the government already provides this kind of a system. But again, we still need the time how we can really develop the capacity of especially the community, how they can really adopt this kind of practices in the near future. So I think that's the thing that I can share a bit on the Indonesian experience.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Rizaldi. So may I ask Dr. Makandan?
Yes, thank you, Arino-san. Yes, for the case of the Philippines, okay, so I think what I can share with this group is, you know, the floating solar panels in Laguna Lake. So Laguna Lake is the largest lake in the country, and the Laguna Lake Development Authority, it is the government agency that is mandated to manage the lake, has approved recently approved early this year 2,000 hectares of the lake surface for installation of solar PV panels. So at the moment, 800 hectares has already been granted to ASEAN, it's a private company, to install these solar PVs. Okay. Now, next month, prior to this large-scale solar PV in floating solar PVs in Laguna Lake, they conducted case studies or pilot studies a couple of years ago in 4 sites in the lake, and that we found out that in these 4 sites they were able to utilize the energy from the pilot solar PVs in lighting the streets in the barangay, in lighting the basketball court, the police station in the barangay, and so on. So there's really very high potential, no, for these floating solar PVs. Okay. The second item is on the application of solar PVs in agriculture and in agroforestry. So we have found out that energy from solar PVs have been used in pumping water in some barangays for irrigating agroforestry systems. Solar energy is also being used for irrigation. And also in one case study, solar PV is used to increase the day length so that dragon fruit will flower and will produce more fruits. Okay. So I think that's all I can share from our case studies. Okay.
Thank you very much. So next, may I ask Dr. Bundit?
Thank you, Arino-san. For the case of Thailand, solar PV is quite well known for a long time. However, we still have a great barrier, especially the government policy in terms of the buyback, because if the private sector invests large solar farm or large solar rooftop, they have surplus capacity. They have difficulty to sell back to the grid because the utility and the government always say that power supply from solar PV is not stable. It's very for a long time, even more than 10 years up to now. Yeah. So I think it's in the time that the government have to solve this problem, okay, in terms of buyback by using some management and technology, that we need in terms of management, especially the modern grid. Modern grid, I think, is very important that the smart grid should and can solve this kind of problem, like including setting the buyback rate that is suitable for the large solar PV supplier. The problem for the other renewable energy such as biomass, we have limitation. Seeing the land area already limited, land use. And the second one will be wind power. Wind power, we have high potential. However, most of potential for the wind power is in coastal area that belong to government law and regulation, and some high wind potential area in national park. We also need to find out some regulation, revise the policy so that private sector can invade solar power in this kind of area. That is the lesson from Thailand. One problem is even we have carbon neutrality 2050, we have net zero greenhouse gas, low long-term low emission roadmap pathway. However, at this moment, even today, Thai government still rely on energy plan for the year 2018. Even 2019, 2020, 21, 22, 23, even this year 24, Thai government try to revise national energy plan to meet the climate plan. However, from public hearing, we still have difficulty, not so success. Unlike in terms of net zero emission pathway, that now most of Thai people, we do agree that we need to meet net zero emission by 2050. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So lastly, may I ask Dr. Thuy?
Thank you, Chair. So for the case of Vietnam, as mentioned earlier, we set the GHG emission target in the NDC, and the respondent from the survey is also indicating that it's very ambitious, with more than 40% of the GHG emission reduction by 2023 with the condition. Considering the PV, also in the survey indicating that the PV can have very high co-benefit to the adaptation. And you see that Vietnam is a tropical country, so we have a potential, very high potential for PV. And looking at the other developing country, even they are going ahead from Vietnam and ASEAN country more than 10 years, they still install PV. So this experience is not just only among our country, but looking out globally, PV is potential. And of course, PV is renewable energy that can help the ASEAN country and Vietnam to get the net zero as soon as we expected. However, PV is good for, I think, not much long-term target. As mentioned earlier, that we have two themes for GHG reduction. The first one is the carbon neutralization. Neutralization. And the second one is net zero. So for the neutralization, normally we set a target up to 2030. So for this period, the companies and countries can do the job with the different. You can buy the credit and the cap from the other country and from the other company, just to ensure that the total GHG emission of the country or of the company get the cap. But in the long term, up to 2050,
it seems we may temporarily disconnected, but let's wait.
GHG emission will not reduce. So
yes, we hope that the connection comes back soon.
whoa. Sorry. So can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you. Would you conclude? Yes, thank you.
I can hear you clearly.
Okay, we can hear you. Can you hear us?
cannot?
Yes, maybe it seems a little bit disconnected. Okay, so thank you. Maybe let's wait. But in the meantime, may I ask Dr. Makandan? We received a question about the Philippines forestry sector. May I ask you to respond to that question? Thank you.
Yes, hello. Thank you for the question. I think the question states like this. Currently, forestry is not part. Okay, so sorry. It's not part. Sorry, can you hear me?
Okay. Yes, so we can.
Okay, so the question, is it okay, Arina-san, if I read the question?
Okay, yes, now maybe Dr. Tui returned. Sorry, Dr. Makandan, may I ask Dr. Tui to conclude her response first? Thank you.
Yeah, so PV is important for the midterm periods, but for longer term, we have to consider and look at the forest and the carbon capture. So that's the main conclusion.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Traditional patterns. Thank you so much. So may I ask Dr. Makandan?
Okay, so thank you. The question reads like this. Currently, forestry is not part of the Philippines NDC. I believe it is important to include forestry sector in the NDC implementation and also recognize the role of indigenous peoples and local communities in the overall process. How can this be considered in the recommendations? Okay, so first, I have presented the National Adaptation Plan of the Philippines and then the NDC. So in the National Adaptation Plan, there are 8 priority sectors: agriculture and food, second, water, health, fourth, ecosystems and biodiversity, cultural heritage, land use and human settlements, livelihood and industries, and energy, transport, and communications. Okay, now, so in the health and in the ecosystems and biodiversity and in cultural heritage, forestry ecosystems and indigenous peoples are included in this one. For the nationally determined contribution for the NDC, our country just selected 5 sectors that are emitting carbon dioxide. And these are energy, agriculture, transport, industry, and waste, okay? Forestry at the moment is not included in the NDC because the forestry sector has a net negative GHG emission. It is in fact a carbon sink in our greenhouse gas inventory. However, in our National Adaptation Plan, ecosystems and biodiversity, as I have mentioned, is one of the 8 priority sectors for national adaptation. And we have national greening program, so that is planting trees in selected forest areas as well as mangrove forest. And also we have community-based forest management projects all over the country. So to reforest, conserve, and rehabilitate our forest areas, okay? And indigenous peoples or indigenous communities are also involved in these national greening and CBFM projects. We also have the NIPAS, which is the National Indigenous Peoples Act. So in the NAP, forestry sector and our indigenous peoples are included in our plans for national adaptation. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. So lastly, one question to Dr. Bundit. So may I ask you one question? Yeah, why 2019 is selected as a baseline year for absolute emission reduction? Would you answer compactly? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Anino-san. If you look at global stock trade, in this year, this time, we developed NDC 3.0 using the guideline from UN climate change, and we also consider outcome from global stock trade. If you look at global stock trade, you see that the most recent year that we have information, not only in Thailand, I think in UN also, that is the year 2019. Yeah, that is the year 2019. So 2019 is suitable. Okay. However, even after COVID-19 pandemic, 3 years, that means after year 2020, 2022, 23, emission may increase or overshoot. However, Thailand still expect that we will have a peak emission by 2025. And then upon at this moment, NDC action plan of the current NDC, that means present NDC, now is under consideration of the cabinet. That is the final stage. The government may announce within this November. And if the current NDC government announce, so that means emission level by the year 2030 of Thailand will be at the level of, as I remember, it about 320 or 330 million tons. That is lower than the base year. The base year 2019 emission level is expected because we are still dropping BTR1. It's not official information about. I could like to tell you just the estimation around 380 million tons by the year 2019. And 2030, emission will be around 330. That is lower. And new NDC by the year 2035, emission will be must be lower than 300. We expect should be around 270-80 million tons. And then that is the pathway that Thailand can meet carbon neutrality by 2050. I think this is very high ambition target. And we also would like to encourage our ASEAN friends to use absolute emission reduction rather than BAU. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Because of the time now approaching, I'd like to conclude this session 2 as well as this workshop. Thank you very much for today's discussions as well as sharing your research results. Synergy about mitigation adaptation can be the catalyst to understand the cross-sectoral coordination, and it will be promoting the mainstreaming of not only the sectoral policies but also developmental policy, land use policy to integrate climate change objectives and policies and measures into each policy, we hope. So considering the ASEAN's process, that ASEAN Climate Change Strategic Action Plan will be going on. So we have a kickoff meeting on the 28th of November. So we hope to invite 6 other countries, and with 10 member states, we like to kick off this ACCSAP's aspirational kind of a journey together. And lastly, we like to have one announcement. We also have a thematic track 3 of ISAP session on the 27th of November. We hope that you would also check and register. The topic is to realize net zero in Asia, the methodology of support for implementing climate change mitigation plans. We hope that our dialogue today will be the milestone for us to work together and collaborate together for the future of ASEAN as well as other Asian countries. Thank you so much for today. We hope that you have a good day. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you very much.